Wolverine is one of Marvel's most popular characters, and he also happens to be a character with a huge, confusing, interwoven past. And you know what that means? Retcons. For example, for pretty much as long as he has been around, save his very first outing when he fought the Hulk and the Wendigo, and that time that Marvel tried to say that he was descended from wolves, Wolverine has been a mutant. But that wasn't always the intention. Apparently, before they went the mutant route, Marvel had very nearly decided to make it so that Wolverine wasn't a mutant at all, but actually a super evolved Wolverine, like the literal animal. This would have been a result of the High Evolutionary, who has a thing for turning animals into animal people. Whether it was the original creator's idea or not to have Wolverine be an actual Wolverine is unsure, but the original creator did intend on having the High Evolutionary be involved in some capacity, and I am so glad that is not what happened. In our Marvel superheroes with powers we still don't understand, I talked about how Wolverine has a healing factor that had inexplicably gotten stronger and stronger. Well, it turns out that Marvel did indeed address this. In his first outing in Incredible Hulk number 181 from 1974, Wolverine didn't heal rapidly at all. Instead, he was so fast that the Hulk could barely even touch him. It was only in 1977's X-Men number 107 that his healing factor was established, but originally it was nowhere near as powerful as it is today. It used to be that it took Wolverine weeks and even months sometimes to heal from major injuries, while the minor stuff would heal instantly. But starting in the 1990s, Wolverine's healing started ramping up and up and up until it was at the point that he healed from a nuclear incineration within literal minutes. Once people started to point out his inexplicable power boost, Wolverine explained this away by saying that his healing factor grew more efficient the more he used it. Boom. Problem solved. Okay, so Wolverine has that insane healing factor. It was so insanely powerful that Wolverine seemed to be able to just brush off death like it was the common cold. Or like when you're going for a run and you get like a muscle cramp and you just need to slow down for like a sec. It was like that. Wolverine just didn't seem to be capable of dying. So Marvel had to do some talking. When Marvel decided the time had come to finally wipe out Wolverine for real, they needed a new explanation for how he managed to cheat death in the past. And so in Mark Guggenheim and Howard Chaykin's 2008 Wolverine run, it was revealed that Wolverine actually had, in fact, passed away before. Many times in the past, in fact. But each time he had, he also fought Lazair, the literal angel of death, for the right to come back to life. As part of that little revelation, Wolverine fighting angels, Wolverine discovered that his soul had also been damaged, and so he made a deal with Lazair himself to fix his soul, which had the added side effect that he would actually stay in the afterlife. Then came the death of Wolverine story, and can you guess what happened? Yeah, that's right. He still came back to life. Now Wolverine's past is going to be where about 90% of his retcons are focused. His past is so murky and wrapped up in memory wipes that even his real name comes into question. In Chris Claremont and John Byrne's Uncanny X-Men number 139 from 1990, it was revealed that Wolverine's real name was Logan, which is my favorite of his names, but crucially, he didn't say if it was his first name or his last name. Which is great because this became a critical point that other comics and writers could play with for their stories. Over time, throughout the comics, Wolverine had also been referred to by the name James from various different sources. It wasn't until New X-Men number 143 when a file in the Weapon X program listed his name as James Logan. Boom! Combo. Best of both worlds. But wait, there's more. In Wolverine Origins, which is just a bucket of retcons wrapped up in a pretty bow, it was revealed and made canon that Wolverine's original name was James Howlett, with Logan just being the name of his family's groundskeeper. Personally, I'm happy he stole that man's name. Now, while speaking of that past and Wolverine's family, one person who is often thought of when you talk about Wolverine is his main rival and nemesis, Sabretooth. Sabretooth was originally created by Chris Claremont and John Byrne for Iron Fist number 14 in 1977, but once readers began to notice all the different similarities to Wolverine, it just made sense that they became enemies. The two fought lots of times, with Sabretooth being one of the most destructive forces in Wolverine's life. But in Wolverine number 41 from 1991, it all took a whole new personal turn when Sabretooth revealed to Logan they were actually father and son. As much as this absolutely blew people's minds, it did kind of make sense. I mean, look at them. They look fairly similar, they have fairly similar powers and attributes, and Sabretooth is quite a bit older than Wolverine. But it really did not stick. Like, I'm talking in the very next issue, the whole thing was revealed as a lie by Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D., who backed that up with DNA testing to prove that Wolverine definitely was not Sabretooth's son. Now, as a large chunk of fans may know, Wolverine became an official member of the X-Men in Giant Size X-Men Annual #1 from 1975. Professor X had recruited Logan, or James, or whatever you want to call him, from the Canadian government following losing the original team of X-Men to the mutant island Krakoa. Wolverine has always been a bit of a lone wolf, but going against character, he agreed to team up with the other mutants. For anyone who found this grizzled short man's team up a bit odd, Daniel Way and Mike Deodato's Wolverine Origins #29 in 2008 offers up a little bit of a change-a-roo. In the comic, Professor X reveals that Wolverine had been sent many years before their first meeting in Canada in order to wipe Professor X into the Shadow Realm. Xavier, being an incredibly powerful telepath, knew exactly what Wolverine was up to, so in seeing the potential of Wolverine as a weapon that he could use to aid his own efforts, Professor Xavier used his powers to completely erase Wolverine's memory and implant a psychic suggestion to become an X-Man, thus continuing a long line of Professor X actually being the worst. Now, one of the major defining moments of Wolverine's entire life was his abduction, brainwashing, reconditioning, and weaponization under the Weapon X program. But the very idea of Weapon X and what it even is has gone through a lot of changes. In 1975's Giant Size X-Men Annual #1, Wolverine himself was codenamed Weapon X, but that changed in Wolverine #50 from 1991, with Weapon X becoming the name of the super soldier program that experimented on him. Then, in New X-Men #129 from 2002, an absolutely huge retcon came in the form of the X in Weapon X actually standing for the Roman numeral for 10, meaning that Wolverine was the 10th iteration of the project, with other experiments going all the way back to World War II and with more projects after him. This changes the program's real name to the Weapon Plus program, and a good chunk of the super soldiers in Marvel Comics were part of the program, including Captain America, who was the very first success under Operation Rebirth. So Weapon X itself underwent some changes, but what Weapon X even did to Wolverine also seemed to undergo some changes too, specifically surrounding those massive claws. In his first appearance fighting against the Incredible Hulk and the Wendigo in Incredible Hulk #181, Wolverine did everything he did with his big pointy claws out the entire time. He never retracted them. This would imply that Wolvie's claws were attached to his gloves, which was the intention. When he returned in Giant Size X-Men Annual #1, Wolverine could now retract his claws, but it was still widely assumed that they were attached to his gloves. It wasn't until X-Men #98 from 1976 that Wolverine got those gloves off, and oh me oh my, he was still able to pop his claws. This meant that the claws were an actual part of his body. But it wasn't until X-Men Volume 2 #25, after having the adamantium forcibly ripped out of his body by Magneto, that Wolverine came to learn that his claws were 1, actually made of bone and were just covered in adamantium, but 2, were in fact another part of his mutation alongside his healing factor and his senses. This fact was a large enough revelation to blow a hole in several Wolverine stories where he specifically talks about not having claws before getting involved with the Weapon X program, and it contradicts several actual comic book panels of Wolverine having his adamantium bonded to his skeleton, where it was heavily implied that the claws were implanted alongside everything else. Now, as we can see from any comic book ever, and also the rest of this list, Wolverine's life kinda sucked. It was so bad. He fought in countless wars, all of his significant others lost their lives, and he suffered some of the worst injuries ever. Wolverine seemingly had the worst luck, even worse than Spider-Man. Or was it all just someone pulling the strings? In Jeff Loeb and Simone Bianchi's Wolverine #50 from 2007, Wolverine started having dreams of a mysterious figure known as Romulus. Romulus was thousands of years old and had been manipulating Wolverine before he was born. He secretly controlled Weapon X, took Wolverine's son Daken and made him hate Wolverine, arranged for the passing of Wolverine's lovers over the years, and had been controlling Wolverine's life from the shadows. Romulus even brought this really weird retcon that made Wolverine a different species that was descended from wolves, which itself was retconned. But the weirdest of all was when Romulus even claimed that Wolverine was the one who altered his own memories to make himself into a test subject, and that Weapon X is and always was Wolverine's own idea. That one just never got mentioned again because, like a lot of Romulus, it was kinda just stupid. And finally, Wolverine has been around for a long time. It used to be that literally no one actually knew how old he was and how long he had been around. This meant that he has run into a lot of different famous characters over the course of Marvel's history. So many different characters, in fact, that Marvel seemed to actually lose track of who he met and when. In Wolverine Nick Fury The Scorpio Connection from 1989, Logan tells Nick Fury that they actually knew each other way back in his Canadian intelligence days. But then, we fast forward to Wolverine Origins number 17, and we actually see their first meeting happen, taking place during World War II. And that little comment from 1989 didn't seem to be mentioned even a little tiny bit. There was also a time where he met Captain America, but then you fast forward to their first meeting, and Mr. Rogers didn't seem to recognize Logan or his hair or weirdly proportioned body even a little bit. And that, nerds, is the list. Thank you guys so much for watching today on Top 10 Nerd. I'm Adam Andrews. I will catch you all on the flippity flop, and until then, stay safe and peace out, nerds. Snikt, snikt.